Hey guys, Junkman back again. Back in the junk closet. What happened? For some reason, my son decided that he wanted to take spring break. Yep, and what's he do during spring break? Hangs out upstairs inside my studio playing PlayStation all the time. I don't know why. I want to play PlayStation. I want to make videos, but no, I got to come back down here. But being that I'm cramped and you don't want to look at my ugly face the whole time, I'm going to just slow up a lot of pictures during this video. What are we going to talk about today? My top 10 toys of the 90s. Well, action figures, not just toys, just action figures. I ran across some videos a couple weeks ago where someone was talking about a spider. Ugh, that's why I don't like the closet. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, I ran across some videos where these guys were talking about how bad the action figures were in the 90s. What are these people smoking, right? The 90s was a great time for action figures. Me personally, I like the 80s better, but the 90s was a great time for action figures. Not only did you have the normal action figure for kids, this was a time for a great boom in toy collecting. You had collector items. You had toy companies reaching for the collectors. You had a new group of collectors, guys that grew up in the 80s, hitting about their early 20s now, buying action figures. This was the start of the collector's boom. And yes, even if I'm a fan of 80s toys, I still love the 90s toys. I mean, just look right here. We got Robin Hood, a 90s action figure line. A very good one. Doesn't make my list, but still a very good one. And then over here on this wall, we've got, look at this one. Thomas Riker. Again, like I tell you every time, not William Riker, Thomas Riker. His clone double. And look at this. You can't see it. Foot number 0001. How awesome is that? Although I contacted Playmates and they told me they keep all the 001s, so this must be some kind of error. But when I first found it, it was rare to find, and when I saw it had 00001, I was amazed. And you might be asking yourself, what is 0001? Well, if you don't know this line, they numbered the figures. See, like I said, they were reaching collectors back in the 90s because of the collector's boom. And I'll have more on this line soon, believe me. And then you can see one right here, one I often talk about whenever I talk about the 90s. This guy always comes up. Now, I'll be honest, look at this car. This car's a little beat up. It's Iceman from the X-Men line. When I worked at Toys R Us, this was a hot item. Every collector wanted this. It was one per case. So when I found one, I hid it in the back. So if I found a toy collector shopping, I would say, guess what I got in the back, guy? I got you an Iceman. Didn't want some kid to buy it and open it up. I know. I'm not saying that was right. Not saying it was wrong. But that's what I did back then. But if I saw a collector or someone wanting Iceman, believe me, I would run back there and get one for him. So let's look at the 90s action figures. Starting off our top 10 with a figure only released in 1994. Earthworm Jim by the company Playmates. Just a wacky, fun action figure line that looked amazing. Playmate toys were always at the top of their game at designing toys. I don't know, I think this was based on a video game. Maybe a cartoon, but I think it was based on a video game. I really didn't know much about Earthworm Jim. I just really liked how they looked. They were just so goofy. Number 9, it's a toy line I don't really hear many people talk about when they talk about the 90s toys. And it's based on a character from the 60s. I think it was the 60s. You know, I grew up it was always on TV in the 70s, but I think it started in the 60s. And that is Speed Racer. This is an amazing toy line. As being a kid growing up on Speed Racer, we didn't really have toys. And to find these toys in the 90s, when I was in the midst of being a toy collector, when I had to have everything, this was an amazing line to have. And the best part of this action figure line isn't the action figures. It's the Mark V Speed Racer car. If you see this, pick it up. It has great detail. It looks amazing. And if you're a box collector, this looks good in the box. It has a flap that opens up to show you the Mark V inside. So even if you're one that likes to keep stuff in a box and likes to display stuff, it's going to look amazing in your collection. This is a very good line. The prize of this collection is the Mark V. I wish they did a couple of the other cars, like maybe Racer X's car. But still, this one here is great. And it came with 2 exclusive figures. The little boy and the monkey, Chum Chum, I think was his name. But anyway, number 9 is a great line. Again, I don't hear many people give much love to, and that's sad. It's the Speed Racer action figure line. Now let's talk about another toy company that did really good toys back in the 90s, Toy Biz. This is a series of action figures based on
an animated series. If you can't guess by the photo, it's the Spider-Man animated series action figure line. I remember this time the Rhino was really a hard figure to find. I think he was one per case. I remember a great story where I went to a toy show back in the 90s with my best friend, and he talked himself into paying like $30, $35 for Rhino because, like I said, he was very hard to find. On the way back home, we stopped by Service Merchandise just to check out action figures, and what did I see right there? Right there in the front of the action figure line? Rhino. So I picked up my Rhino for, $5, $6. He paid like $30, $35 for his. He wasn't happy. This is a very good line. I've always loved Spider-Man. He's always been one of my favorite superheroes. The figures look really good. The details are really good. The figures always look really good. They did a whole line, not just based on the animated series. It was a 12-inch line. Some of him riding around in a spider car. I don't understand why they do silly stuff like that. But there was a lot of products in the Spider-Man name during the 90s. But all those under the Spider-Man logo, to me, the animated series figures are the top of the line. And here's the one I put on the list more for a toy fan than a collector's fan. Because although I didn't play with these, I know kids in the 90s that did that really loved this line and spoke highly of it. And we're talking Exo Squad. They were just a lot of fun. It was kind of one of those build and play. They had the armor that you could put the figures inside of. This line ran from 1993 to 1995, but there was also another series called Exo Squad Robotech, where they took Robotech and mixed it with Exo Squad. Both of these are made by Playmates, another top-of-the-line toy company back in the 90s. Again, this one I don't really see as something for collectors. It was more, at least not in the 90s, it was more something just fun for the kids. Now this is another figure line to me that was just pure fun back in the 90s. Now to me, this is another line that was just fun to collect. They had two different lines. One, a smaller die-cast line of figures, and the one we're talking here, the action figures. And if you can't tell, we're talking about the Tick. I love this line. I wasn't even a fan of the Tick. I never really watched it. This line was based on the cartoon series. I never watched it, but I love this line. And I would try to buy every one I could. Back then, the hardest one to find was Man-Eating Cow. Luckily, I did find one at KB Toys on clearance for $2.99. Now, they did do a live action series, which I was a big fan of, but it only lasted a couple of episodes. Even if I didn't really know the Tick that well, I still bought every one of these figures because look at them. They just look amazing. We start off the top 5 with the first action figure line aimed at collectors, not kids. And you may remember this toy company as Todd Toys, but it later became better known as McFarlane. And we're talking about Spawn. One of the biggest new superheroes of the 90s was Spawn, and his figures were just as popular as his comic book. And as I said, these were aimed more for collectors, and McFarlane started a whole market of action figures lines based on collectors. He showed toy companies out there more than anyone that it wasn't just kids buying toys. These were not the toys of the 80s. This was a whole new type of toy. And just look at that clown. Ooh, scary. Our number 4 best action figure line of the 90s is based on an animated series that never happened, Operation Alien. But you know this line simply as Aliens. Now, a lot of people complain that the figures didn't look anything like the characters from the film, but that is because it was based on a Fox cartoon series that never made it to air. Don't worry, we have a whole video about that, so just check my videos if you want to know more details about that series. This was a great line. I love how the bubble on the card was shaped like an egg. And it came with a free comic book, something that was always very fun to have. There was another line of Predator action figures, and I would put these in the same category. I would almost see this as a sister line. So at number 4, I would call this an Aliens and Predator line. Near the end of the run, they did get a little kind of too wacky with the aliens, but I never felt they went too far. This is a great line to collect. Now at number 3, probably the most successful action figure line of the 90s, the Uncanny X-Men. It was so popular that it spun off other series, such as Generation X, New Mutants, Steel Mutants, X-Force. They even did an X-Men vs. Street Fighter line. But we're talking here the original X-Men series that ran from 1991 to 1998. Any fan of the X-Men comics was ecstatic to find these X-Men action figures, and they looked great. And they were one of the first toy lines to do exclusives, such as the Green Wolverine or Weapon X that was only released at KB. Any comic book fan or any X-Men fan had to collect the X-Men action figure line. And anyone that watches any of my toy videos knows how much I love this line. Coming in at number 2 is another Kenner line, Batman the Animated Series. This one ran from 1992 to 1995, although the line did continue under the Crime Squad line and then changed the name again to The Adventures of Batman and Robin. This is by far one of the greatest action figure lines there is, not just in the 90s. The detail is amazing. They're based on a very well-loved cartoon series, and I can't say enough about how great I love these figures. The only problem, they did a little too many of the Batman action figures, where they just got carried away doing a different color of Batman almost every week. The best part of this line is, of course, the villains. For more on the Batman line, check out the video I did all about the Batman Animated Series. I think you'll really enjoy it. And now, the number 1 best action figure line of the 1990s. The first attempt in the 80s to do an action figure line based on this television show failed. But in the 90s, Playmates took over the line and it came back strong. Of course, we're talking about Star Trek, The Next Generation. Although Playmates continued to make figures based on Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and even the films. But nothing could compare with the Star Trek Next Generation figures. They look great. They did almost every character you could think of from the Next Generation, except for a real action figure of Alexander, Worf's son. For some reason we just got a hard hunk of plastic for him in a cowboy suit. The downfall of this action figure line to me was they made figures based on the new Next Generation movies like First Contact bigger than the normal Next Generation figures. I still to this day don't understand why they would change the size of the action figures right in the middle of a line. Why you would do the TV series in one size, all the other movie figures the same size, and then for First Contact, make them bigger. Never understood that. But to me, the best action figure line is Star Trek. Not just because of how good they look, it's because of how many they made. It is a full line. Almost any character you want from Star Trek can be found in this line.
Thank you again for watching. I hope to be back in a couple of days, back in my studio, back in the junk room. Until then, please support us on Patreon, please. You get a lot of exclusive. I'm going to have more exclusives there soon. We're still working on bringing more stuff to the Patreon site. And I want to tell you about the new podcast coming April 1st, 1978. 1978? Yeah, 1978. The first Star Wars podcast. Actually, it's going to be online April 1st, 2018, but we're going to act like it's 1978. I'm going to go through every podcast. We're going to go all the way leading up to The Empire Strikes Back. We're going to have rumors about Star Wars 2. We're going to have news about the Kenner action figure line. Just stuff going on in the world in 1978. On TV and music. We're going to just have a lot of fun. I've already started working on this podcast, and it's probably the most fun podcast I've done so far. So if you're a fan of at least the Kenner Chronicles, check out this one. It's going to be called the First Star Wars Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at First Star Wars Show. I put a sample video up a couple days ago on this channel, so check it out. Again, it's going to be a podcast about Star Wars that takes place in 1978. I think you'll enjoy it. At least I hope you will. So check that out. And again, keep your eye at StarWarsJunk.net. We're going to have a lot more for you, and I'll be back in my studio very soon. Thank you for watching.
Thank you, sir, for that unsolicited testimony.